The Galactic Council chamber felt cold, despite the warm air flowing through its massive halls. Admiral Zektar of the Vorthan Empire stood before the assembled representatives, his scaled hands trembling slightly as he held the datapad containing the most shocking report in 300 years. The various alien species that made up the council watched him with growing concern as his usual confident demeanor cracked under the weight of what he had discovered. Scout ships had detected something impossible in the Tau Ceti system. An unknown vessel had appeared there without warning, its energy signature unlike anything in their extensive databases. The system had been declared off-limits 2 centuries ago, after the primitive human species was presumed extinct following their sun's collapse. No one was supposed to be there. No one should have been able to survive there. Captain Lisa Grant stood on the bridge of the UNS Liberator, watching the stars shift back into normal patterns as her ship completed its experimental fold-space jump. The bridge hummed with quiet activity as her crew of 300 slowly awakened from their decades-long cryo-sleep. They had traveled through dimensions beyond normal space and time, following paths that existed only in theoretical physics textbooks. The journey had taken them far from everything they once knew. Lisa ran her fingers along the smooth surface of her command chair, feeling the slight vibration of the ship's quantum engines beneath her feet. Earth was gone now, consumed by their dying star just as the scientists had predicted. The planet that had given birth to humanity existed only in memories and historical records. But her mission remained crystal clear despite the loss. She would find a new home for the surviving. Human colonies scattered across hidden outposts. Throughout the galaxy, the Liberator's sensors began, painting a picture of the space around them that made no sense according to their old star charts. Massive artificial structures dotted the system, their geometric patterns clearly indicating intelligent construction. Space stations the size of small moons orbited dead worlds, while mining operations stripped asteroids down to their metallic cores. Someone had been very busy during humanity's long absence from this region of space. On the planet Nexus Prime, thousands of light-years away, Council Speaker Velmoth convened an emergency session that would reshape galactic politics forever. The major powers answered his call with unusual speed. The crystalline Zephyrians arrived first, their ship bodies glittering like living diamonds as they took their positions in the council chamber. The insectoid Krex Dominion followed, their chittering voices filling the air with complex harmonics that only their species could fully understand. The gaseous Netheri collective flowed into their designated section of the chamber, their forms shifting between different states of matter as they communicated through chemical releases. 12 other species completed the assembly, each representing civilizations that had spent the last 2 centuries carving up what they believed was humanity's vacant territory. The appearance of an advanced human vessel threatened everything they had built. Dr. Alan Cross stood in the Liberator's science laboratory, studying the ancient star charts with growing excitement. The ship's quantum sensors were detecting things that shouldn't exist according to their records. Mineral compositions that suggested massive industrial activity, energy patterns that indicated civilizations had been thriving in systems that were supposedly empty. The galaxy had changed dramatically while humanity slept. Alan adjusted his instruments and ran another scan of the nearest space station. The structure was clearly artificial, but its design didn't match any known architectural style from their historical databases. Whoever built it had access to technology that humanity had never encountered before. The implications were both fascinating and terrifying. Back in the council chamber, Admiral Zektar finally found his voice and began his report. The scout ships had been conducting routine patrols of the former human territories when their sensors detected the massive energy signature. The vessel appeared to be of human origin, but its technological capabilities far exceeded anything in their intelligence files about the extinct species. Speaker Velmoth listened to the report with growing alarm. The human territories had been divided among the council members based on their contributions to the Galactic Defense Network. Those systems contained some of the richest mining worlds and most strategic positions in known space. The major powers had invested centuries of development in claiming and colonizing those regions. The assembled representatives began to murmur among themselves as the implications became clear. If humans had somehow survived their sun's destruction, They might have legal claims to territories that were now integral parts of other civilizations. Trade agreements, mining rights, and colonial settlements could all be challenged if humanity had truly returned from extinction. Captain Grant walked to the main view screen and watched. The alien structures grow larger as her ship moved deeper into the system. Each station and facility represented resources and effort on a massive scale. Someone had been systematically exploiting what had once been human space, treating it as their own personal territory. The question was whether this occupation had been legal or simply opportunistic. Lieutenant Amy Foster approached from her station at Tactical, her young face showing concern as she studied the sensor readings. The nearest space station was responding to their presence by powering up what appeared to be defensive systems. Weapons arrays were rotating to track their movement, and energy levels were building in ways that suggested preparation for combat. Dr. Cross joined them at the view screen, his scientific curiosity warring with practical concerns about their safety. The alien technology was clearly advanced, but its exact capabilities remained unknown. They were alone in hostile territory, surrounded by civilizations that might view their return as an invasion rather than a homecoming. The Galactic Council reached their decision with unusual speed and unanimity. The human ship represented an unacceptable threat to the established order that had brought peace and prosperity to the galaxy for 2 centuries. Whatever technology allowed a supposedly extinct species to return with such advanced capabilities could not be allowed to fall into the wrong hands. Admiral Zektar received his orders through encrypted channels as the council session concluded. A combined fleet of 47 warships from 8 different species would be dispatched immediately to the Tau Ceti system. Their mission was simple and direct: destroy the human intruders and secure their advanced technology for study and distribution. Among the council members, Captain Grant felt the weight of command settling on her shoulders as her ship continued its approach to the alien installations. Whatever happened next would determine not just her crew's fate, but the future of humanity itself in a galaxy that seemed to have moved on without them. Commander Jake Harrison stood at his tactical station aboard the UNS Liberator, watching the sensor displays with growing concern as dozens of new contacts appeared on the edge of the system. The massive formation represented more firepower than humanity had ever assembled in one place, yet something about the alien fleet's approach patterns felt wrong. Their movement suggested aggressive intent rather than curiosity or diplomatic contact. The alien ships moved in perfect formation, their hulls gleaming under the light of distant stars as they accelerated toward the human vessel. Jake counted 47 distinct signatures ranging from small escort frigates to massive dreadnought-class battleships. Each vessel displayed unique design characteristics that spoke of different species working together for a common purpose. Captain Lisa Grant studied the approaching fleet from her command chair, her experienced eyes taking in the tactical situation with practiced ease. She had hoped for peaceful first contact with whatever civilizations had taken residence in human space, but the alien formation was clearly preparing for battle rather than negotiation. Their weapon systems were already powering up as they closed the distance. Lisa activated the ship's communication array and began broadcasting on all known frequencies, using the 17 different languages stored in their cultural database. Her message was simple and direct, transmitted in mathematical concepts that any spacefaring civilization should understand. The Liberator was a peaceful exploration vessel seeking contact with intelligent life. They meant no harm and requested dialogue. The response came not in words but as weapons lock warnings that flashed across every display on the bridge. The alien fleet had opened fire without provocation, treating the human vessel as either a ghost to be exorcised or a prize to be claimed. Energy beams and projectile weapons streaked through space toward the Liberator, their destructive potential enough to crack small moons. On the bridge of the Krek's flagship Mandible of Victory, Fleet Admiral Chiklar studied the human vessel through compound eyes that could process visual information across 17 different spectrums. His insectoid features showed satisfaction as his fleet moved into optimal attack positions. The unknown ship's energy signatures were unlike anything in their extensive databases, suggesting technology that had advanced by centuries. Admiral Chiklar had built his reputation on successful salvage operations and technology acquisition missions. Whatever innovations the mysterious human vessel contained would provide significant advantages to whichever species claimed them first. The Galactic Council had promised equal distribution of any recovered technology, but the Admiral had his own plans for the most valuable discoveries. Lieutenant Amy Foster watched her tactical display with growing alarm as the alien weapons reached optimal firing range. Standard military doctrine suggested immediate retreat when facing overwhelming odds, but Captain Grant seemed determined to stand her ground. The Liberator was alone against an entire battle fleet, outgunned by ratios that made victory seem impossible. Amy's fingers moved across her console, bringing the ship's defensive systems online as the first enemy salvos approached their position. The Liberator's experimental shielding had never been tested against alien weapons technology, and the theoretical models could only predict so much about real combat performance. They were about to discover whether human engineering could match alien firepower. The first alien energy beam struck the Liberator's quantum shielding with devastating force that should have vaporized any known ship design. Weapons that could crack planetary surfaces and boil away ocean waters focused their destructive power on the human vessel. The space around the ship became a storm of energy that turned nearby asteroids into glowing plasma. Inside the Liberator, the crew felt only a slight vibration as the alien weapons discharged their fury against the ship's defensive systems. The quantum shields absorbed each impact and redirected the energy into the ship's power grid, actually strengthening their defensive capabilities with every enemy attack. What should have been their destruction became an unexpected source of additional power. In the alien fleet, confusion began to replace confidence as their most powerful weapons proved completely ineffective against the human technology. The mysterious vessel continued to broadcast peaceful intentions, even as it effortlessly shrugged off attacks that could devastate entire worlds. Something was very wrong with their intelligence about human capabilities. Admiral Chikalar ordered his fleet to increase their rate of fire, pouring every available weapon system into the continuing bombardment. Plasma cannons designed to melt through starship armor fired continuously alongside particle beams that could slice through solid metal like paper. The combined firepower of 8 different military traditions focused on destroying a single target. Dr. Alan Cross monitored the alien communications from his science station, his translation software working to decode the various languages being used across the enemy fleet. What he discovered sent chills down his spine as the true scope of the misunderstanding became clear. The aliens believed humanity was extinct, and had been treating human space as abandoned territory for 2 centuries. The intercepted
messages revealed that these species had been
systematically looting human colonies and claiming credit for human innovations. Survivors had been enslaved or driven into hiding while their technological achievements were stolen and redistributed among the alien civilizations. The extinct humans had been very much alive but powerless to resist their oppressors. Captain Grant received Dr. Cross's report with grim determination as the alien bombardment continued around her ship. The situation was far worse than a simple territorial dispute or case of mistaken identity. These civilizations had built their expansion on the exploitation of human suffering, treating her species as convenient resources rather than intelligent beings deserving of respect. Commander Harrison reported that the alien fleet was beginning to show signs of weapon overheating and ammunition depletion. Their sustained bombardment had pushed their systems beyond safe operating limits, yet the human ship remained completely undamaged. Some of the smaller vessels were actually falling back to avoid catastrophic system failures. Amy watched her displays as several alien ships began to drift out of formation, their weapon systems dark and their engines struggling to maintain power. The massive energy expenditure required for their attack was taking its toll on ships designed for shorter engagements. They had never encountered an enemy that could simply absorb unlimited punishment without fighting back. The Galactic Council fleet found itself in an impossible situation as their ammunition supplies dwindled and their weapons overheated from continuous firing. The human vessel remained pristine and undamaged, its strange technology turning their greatest strengths into useless gestures. For the first time in centuries, the combined might of multiple civilizations had proven inadequate against a single opponent. Chief Engineer Ryan Blake stood in the Liberator's engine room, staring at readings that should have been impossible according to everything he knew about physics. The ship's quantum core was displaying power levels that exceeded their original design specifications by factors that made his instruments question their own accuracy. The experimental technology had somehow evolved during their journey through dimensional space, achieving capabilities that defied known scientific principles. Ryan ran his hands through his hair as he studied the energy flow patterns coursing through the ship's systems. What had begun as humanity's desperate attempt to escape their dying solar system had transformed into something far more significant during their travels through fold space. The quantum fields that powered their vessel had somehow learned to manipulate reality itself, growing stronger with each passing year of their long journey. Captain Lisa Grant received Ryan's report with a mixture of amazement and concern as the alien bombardment continued to rage around her ship. The chief engineer's voice carried notes of wonder and fear as he explained that their defensive systems were not just absorbing the enemy attacks, but actually using that energy to upgrade themselves. The Liberator was becoming more powerful with every shot fired against it. Lisa authorized the activation of systems that had been theoretical when they left Earth's dying light behind them. The ship's quantum lance arrays had been designed as mining tools for asteroid processing, but their evolution during the dimensional journey had transformed them into something entirely different. Weapons that could reshape matter at the subatomic level began to hum with power that resonated through every deck. The bridge crew watched in amazement as energy, patterns unlike anything in their training manuals, began building within the weapon cores. Lights that had never existed before appeared on their control panels, displaying readouts for capabilities that their original designers had never imagined possible. The Liberator had become something beyond human engineering during its long sleep between dimensions. Admiral Zektar felt his confidence crumble as his flagship's sensors registered energy spikes from the human vessel that exceeded his entire fleet's combined output. Decades of intelligence analysis had suggested that humans were primitive warmongers with crude chemical rockets and ballistic weapons. The vessel before him represented technology that surpassed even the most advanced Galactic Council specifications by orders of magnitude. The Admiral's tactical officer reported weapon signatures that didn't exist in any known database, energy configurations that violated several fundamental laws of physics as currently understood by galactic science. Whatever the humans had discovered during their supposed extinction had elevated them far beyond the technological level of any known civilization in the galaxy. Dr. Alan Cross made discoveries in the alien communications that sent shockwaves through his understanding of recent galactic history. His translation programs revealed that these species had not simply moved into abandoned human territory after humanity's disappearance. They had been actively hunting down human survivors for 2 centuries, enslaving entire populations and claiming credit for human innovations as their own discoveries. The intercepted messages spoke of mining operations on human worlds that used human prisoners as disposable labor forces, research facilities where human scientists were forced to develop new technologies for their captors before being eliminated to preserve secrecy, trading networks that sold human beings as exotic pets or curiosities to wealthy collectors across multiple star systems. Alan's hands shook as he compiled evidence of systematic genocide disguised as legitimate expansion. The extinct humans had been very much alive throughout the past 2 centuries, but their voices had been silenced by species that found it more convenient to pretend they had never existed. Millions of human lives had been sacrificed to support the galactic economy that these civilizations had built. The Galactic Council fleet increased their bombardment intensity as desperation began to replace tactical thinking among their commanders. Every weapon system from 47 different military traditions focused their destructive power on the single human vessel, creating energy concentrations that would have sterilized entire planetary surfaces. The space around the Liberator became a hellstorm of forces that should have unmade matter itself. Admiral Chiklar watched his ammunition counters drop toward 0 as his fleet poured everything they had into the continuing assault. Plasma charges that cost more than small starships disappeared into the human ship's defensive fields without causing any visible damage. Energy beams that could slice through moon-sized asteroids simply vanished upon contact with the mysterious vessel's hull. The Krex Admiral began to suspect that they were not facing superior technology but something that operated on entirely different principles than anything known to galactic science. The human ship seemed to exist partially outside normal spacetime, allowing it to simply ignore attacks that should have been absolutely devastating to any physical Object Commander Jake Harrison coordinated damage control efforts that weren't needed as the alien assault reached levels that should have overwhelmed any defensive system ever created. His instruments showed the ship's quantum shielding, not just holding against the bombardment but actually growing stronger with each impact. The enemy's own weapons were making the Liberator more powerful. Lieutenant Amy Foster monitored the alien fleet's communications as panic began to spread through their ranks. Species that had ruled entire sectors for millennia suddenly found themselves facing technology they couldn't understand, counter, or even comprehend. The humans weren't just survivors of some cosmic disaster but had returned as something entirely new in the galaxy. Ryan reported from engineering that the quantum core was still operating at a small fraction of its apparent capacity. The demonstration of invulnerability that had the alien fleet in such confusion represented only a tiny sample of what the Liberator could actually accomplish. The ship had become something that transcended the normal limitations of matter and energy. During its journey through dimensional space, Captain Grant smiled grimly as she contemplated the implications for galactic politics and the fate of her scattered people. The aliens had spent 2 centuries believing they were the masters of human space, free to exploit and enslave any survivors they encountered. They were about to learn that humanity had not simply survived their trials but had been transformed by them into something far beyond their ability to threaten or control. The alien bombardment reached crescendo levels that turned nearby space into a cauldron of destructive forces, yet the Liberator remained serenely untouched by the chaos surrounding it. Soon it would be time to respond, and the galaxy would discover what humanity had become during their long exile in the spaces between realities. The Liberator emerged from the alien bombardment completely unharmed, its quantum shielding having absorbed and redirected the enemy firepower into its own weapon systems. Captain Lisa Grant stood at her command station watching the tactical displays as her ship's power levels climbed beyond anything their original designers had ever imagined possible. The time for patience and restraint had passed, replaced by the cold necessity of demonstrating humanity's new position in the galactic order. Lisa looked around her bridge at the faces of her crew, seeing determination mixed with anticipation as they waited for her orders. These men and women had trusted her to lead them through the darkness between dimensions, believing in her promise that they would find a new home among the stars. What they had discovered instead was a galaxy built on the bones of their murdered people, a civilization that had prospered by enslaving and exploiting human survivors for 2 centuries. The captain's voice carried across the bridge with quiet authority as she gave the order that would reshape galactic politics forever. Her words were simple and direct, carrying the weight of 200 years of injustice and the power to correct it. The crew responded with professional efficiency, their hands moving across control panels as humanity prepared to remind the galaxy what they were capable of accomplishing. Lieutenant Amy Foster's fingers danced across her tactical console with practiced precision as she brought the Liberator's quantum lance arrays online. The weapon systems had evolved far beyond their original mining applications during the ship's journey through dimensional space. Each beam could now be precisely calibrated to disable rather than destroy, shutting down enemy systems without causing unnecessary loss of life. The first target was a massive Zephyrian crystal ship that served as one of the alien fleet's command vessels. Amy's targeting computers locked onto the crystalline structure's power distribution network, analyzing its energy patterns and identifying the precise frequencies needed to overload its entire electrical system. The quantum lance fired with a sound like reality tearing, its beam reaching across space in an instant. The Zephyrian vessel simply stopped functioning as its entire power grid was overloaded in a matter of seconds. Emergency lighting flickered and died throughout the crystal ship's corridors as its crew found themselves drifting helplessly in space. Their weapon systems went dark, their engines failed, and their communication arrays fell silent. The ship remained intact but completely powerless. Commander Jake Harrison coordinated the defensive screens as the remaining alien ships scattered in panic, their formations breaking apart as fear replaced tactical discipline. The human weapons weren't just advanced beyond galactic understanding, but seemed to operate according to completely different physical principles. Each shot appeared to phase through shields and armor as if they didn't exist, targeting vital systems with surgical precision, Admiral Chickler watched in horror from his flagship's bridge as his carefully planned battle formation disintegrated into chaos around him. Ships that had served the Krex Dominion for centuries suddenly became floating debris, their crews alive but their vessels reduced to powerless hulks drifting through space. The humans weren't just defending themselves but demonstrating capabilities that made resistance seem futile. Dr. Alan Cross monitored alien communications as panic spread through their fleet like a plague. Species that had ruled entire sectors for millennia suddenly faced technology they couldn't understand, counter, or even comprehend through their existing scientific frameworks. The humans weren't just survivors of some cosmic disaster, but had become something entirely new during their exile between dimensions. Amy targeted the next vessel in sequence, a sleek Netheri collective ship whose gaseous crew existed in specially designed containment chambers. Her quantum lance fired again, its beam somehow reaching through the ship's advanced shielding to disable the environmental systems that kept the crew alive. Emergency protocols activated immediately, sealing the aliens in protective stasis while their ship drifted, powerless through space. The alien fleet's tactical advantage evaporated as ship after ship fell victim to weapons that seemed to ignore every defensive technology known to galactic science. Plasma shields designed to deflect energy weapons offered no protection against beams that operated on quantum levels beyond normal physics. Armor plating that could withstand asteroid impacts proved useless against attacks that targeted electrical systems directly. Chief Engineer Ryan Blake reported from the engine room that the Liberator's quantum systems were operating at barely 10% of their apparent capacity. The demonstration that was crippling an entire battle fleet represented only a minor fraction of what humanity's new technology could actually accomplish. The ship had become something that transcended normal limitations during its journey through the spaces between realities. Admiral Zektar tried desperately to coordinate a counterattack from his flagship, but his remaining vessels were too scattered and demoralized to respond effectively. The human ship moved through his fleet like a predator among helpless prey, disabling targets with methodical precision, while ignoring their increasingly frantic attempts to fight back. His weapons couldn't even reach the enemy vessel, let alone damage it. Amy continued her systematic targeting of the alien fleet, each shot carefully calculated to neutralize threats without causing unnecessary casualties. The quantum lances fired in steady rhythm, their beams reaching across space to touch enemy vessels with forces that shut down their systems instantly. Within minutes, dozens of ships that had represented the combined military might of 8 different civilizations drifted helplessly in space. The few remaining functional alien vessels attempted to retreat, their commanders finally recognizing that they faced something far beyond their ability to fight or understand. But the Liberator's weapons had range that extended across entire star systems, and Captain Grant was not inclined to let war criminals escape justice. After 2 centuries of atrocities against her people, Commander Harrison updated the tactical display as the last few alien ships joined their disabled companions in drifting powerlessly through space. 46 vessels that had entered the system with confidence and overwhelming firepower now floated like dead fish in an ocean of stars. Only Admiral Zektar's flagship remained operational, its shields flickering as Captain Grant demonstrated the restraint her species had learned during their years of exile. The 4-minute war was over, its outcome never really in doubt once humanity chose to act. The galaxy would remember this day as the moment when the old order died, and something new was born among the stars. The age of human expansion was about to begin, and this time they would not be merciful to those who had shown no mercy to their people. Captain Lisa Grant opened a direct communication channel to the only remaining functional alien vessel in the destroyed fleet. Admiral Zektar's flagship hung in space like a wounded animal, its shields flickering weakly as its power systems struggled to maintain basic life support. Her message was transmitted in perfect galactic standard, the universal language that all spacefaring civilizations used for diplomatic contact. Lisa's words carried across the void, with the weight of absolute authority backed by demonstrated power. She spoke clearly and directly, her voice free of anger or hatred despite the centuries of injustice her people had suffered. The human demands were simple but non-negotiable, delivered with the calm certainty of someone who held all the advantages in a negotiation that was really more of a surrender. Admiral Zektar found himself in an impossible position as he listened to the human captain's terms. His entire fleet had been neutralized in minutes by weapons that rendered every aspect of galactic military doctrine completely obsolete. The beings his people had, dismissed as extinct primitives, had returned, with technology that made resistance not just futile but literally unthinkable. The Admiral's scaled hands trembled as he contemplated the scope of the disaster that had befallen his expedition. 46 warships representing 8 different civilizations now drifted powerless around his flagship, their crews alive, but their vessels reduced to floating monuments to galactic arrogance. The humans had demonstrated restraint in their overwhelming victory, but that mercy came with a price that would reshape the entire political structure of known space. To Chief Engineer Ryan Blake reported that the Liberators' quantum systems had recorded detailed scans of every disabled alien vessel during the brief battle. The ship's evolved technology had analyzed and cataloged the weaknesses of every major military design in the galactic fleet, storing information that would make future conflicts even more one-sided than this demonstration had been. On the distant planet Nexus Prime, emergency sessions erupted across the Galactic Council chambers as news of the fleet's total defeat reached the various representatives. Quantum communication arrays carried reports that seemed impossible to believe, describing the complete destruction of military forces that had maintained galactic peace for centuries. The humans hadn't just returned from extinction but had evolved into something that made all previous power structures meaningless. Dr. Allen Cross completed his comprehensive analysis of the scattered human colonies that the alien civilizations had been systematically exploiting for 2 centuries. His reports painted a picture of suffering and oppression that made even hardened military personnel weep with rage. Millions of humans had survived in slavery or hiding, while their technological innovations were stolen and claimed by their captors. The bill for reparations that Captain Grant presented to Admiral Zektar would reshape the entire galactic economy if implemented as demanded. Every human life lost to alien oppression carried a price tag that reflected not just monetary compensation, but access to resources, territory, and technology. The civilizations that had built their expansion on human suffering would find their prosperity redistributed to those they had wronged. Admiral Zektar transmitted the human demands to the Galactic Council through encrypted channels, his report accompanied by sensor recordings that documented the impossible battle he had just witnessed. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable, showing weapons technology that operated according to principles beyond current scientific understanding. The age of galactic dominance by the Council species was ending. Speaker Velmoth convened the most important emergency session in Council history, as representatives from across known space gathered to address the crisis. The crystalline Zephyrians flickered with patterns that indicated extreme distress, while the insectoid Krex Dominion chittered in frequencies that expressed barely controlled panic. The gaseous Netheri collective shifted between states of matter so rapidly that their environmental suits struggled to contain them. Commander Jake Harrison monitored communications from across the galaxy as word of humanity's return spread through diplomatic channels. The reaction was universal shock mixed with growing fear, as civilizations realized that their military forces would be helpless against technology that could disable entire fleets in minutes. The balance of power had shifted so dramatically that traditional concepts of warfare had become obsolete. Lieutenant Amy Foster received target coordinates for hidden human settlements scattered across dozens of star systems. The Liberator's sensors had detected the quantum signatures of human technology being used in secret installations throughout what had once been human space. Rescue operations would begin immediately, with the ship's evolved capabilities making resistance from local authorities impossible. Captain Grant established communication links with the hidden human colonies, her transmissions carrying authentication codes that had been dormant for 2 centuries. The responses she received painted a picture of communities that had survived through stealth and determination, preserving human culture and knowledge while avoiding detection by their oppressors. The scattered human settlements had maintained contact with each other through quantum communication networks that operated below the detection threshold of alien monitoring systems. They had watched and waited for 200 years, preserving technology and planning for the day when humanity would be strong enough to reclaim its place among the stars. Dr. Cross documented the extent of technological theft that had occurred during humanity's enforced exile from galactic society. Innovations in medicine, engineering, and energy production that were credited to various alien species had actually originated in human research facilities before being stolen by their captors. The true scope of intellectual property violations reached into every aspect of galactic civilization. Chief Engineer Ryan Blake prepared the Liberators' transportation systems for the massive undertaking of relocating millions of human refugees from dozens of different worlds. The ship's quantum technology made such operations feasible on scales that would have been impossible with conventional space travel. Entire populations could be moved safely and quickly to new homes. The Galactic Council faced a new reality that challenged every assumption about power and politics in known space. Humanity had returned to reclaim not just their lost territory, but their scattered people and stolen innovations. The species they had dismissed as extinct, primitives, now possessed technology that made resistance impossible and submission inevitable. Captain Lisa Grant stood on her bridge looking out at the disabled alien fleet and open secure channels to human colonies across the galaxy. After 2 centuries of exile, exploitation, and oppression, it was finally time to bring her people home to a galaxy that would never again underestimate the resilience and ingenuity of the human species.